Hi, it's Stu, and I'm here for another kind of wild reading wrap up. I don't even know anymore the order in which I've read things. I've been reading multiple books at kind of the same time, and which is a little out of um, my norm. And and I've also kind of, I don't know, I haven't felt very inspired to make videos, so I think that I let it go quite a while since my last wrap up, and I didn't do a TBR. And so here we are. A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Nane Ayoma and translated by Jesse Kirkwood. It was a spontaneous read. And I just kind of came across it every once in a while. I browse just my library's homepage. I came across it and decided to do it. It was a novella. It took me a while to get into it. This writing style reminds me quite a bit of Banana Yoshimoto, who, if you like that, I think you'd like this. If not, you won't. I found it a little difficult to get into the character. I had only just finished Convenience Store Woman, and I was endeared to that character like right away, and this one felt a little harder to get to know, but I think again there was some intentionality of that, and in the end I ended up thinking that this was a great little read that kind of was fitting in the same themes of books that I've been reading, which is, becoming an adult. And that's different than coming of age, like those new adult years where you're fully expected to behave like a full adult, but in fact, you really haven't got much figured out. Other than your own sort of independence, and whatever, that means. The next book I read was The Coin, and that was by Yasmin Zahir. I believe I picked this up for the 52 Book Club's 52 Book Challenge as my winner of a 2025 prize. If I'm not mistaken, this book won the Dylan Thomas Prize for Young Authors. This book is set in New York, and we follow also a protagonist who's in her early 20s, in this new adult era, and she is Palestinian, and she's working at an elementary school. It's like a private elementary school. She's teaching writing. I'm endeared to teachers as characters in books, and I found this protagonist really problematic in a lot of ways, and I appreciate any author's attempt to sort of like get behind the nuances and the inner workings of folks who may be struggling with some mental unwellness. There's no diagnosis, and I'm not a clinician, so just as a reader, I think if this were my friend, I would definitely tell them, can you go, you should look into going to get some help for some of the mental processes that are getting in the way of that are causing problems in your life, I could say. And we can see this clearly in this book, and kind of how it all plays out. And I appreciate this like inner look at that the coin has allowed for us. There is a beautiful scene about the finding of some treasure back when this protagonist is in Palestine, and that scene I think is just so well done. If you read this book, I think you'll remember it too. It'll stick with me forever. I thought it was very impactful. For the trans rights readathon, I read 2 books, and both of these books were recommended by the YouTuber on Perpetual Pages. So I want to do a huge shout out for Perpetual Pages. I think they do fantastic reviews, and I often use their reviews to give me ideas for my reading. So particularly for the Trans Rights Readathon, their YouTube page was one that I watched and learned about the Trans Rights Readathon, and then they gave extensive recommendations for prompts for the Trans Rights Readathon. I didn't read prompts. I just committed myself because I was very, very committed to reading several other readathons and had a pretty long TBR, but I wanted absolutely to make space for the Trans Rights Readathon. So I ended up reading Sorrowland. I actually did this audioly by Rivers Solomon. And in this book, we have kind of a genre bending, it's a bit suspense, some definitely horror elements, both sort of like, you know, the lore horror and also body horror. There's some definitely work with fungus here. There's a lot of social commentary in this book, and we're giving a lot of opportunities to contemplate and confront very serious social issues, such as the medical experimentation on Black bodies and trans and queer identities, and society, and particularly religious oppression. I think is covered in that book as well. On a similar vein, but a much different book, was a young adult, and I was happy to have this be my young adults book. I try to read at least one young adult a month. And that was a Transition by Logan Ashley Kinzer. And in this book, we follow a young protagonist who's just had top surgery, and he's dealing with sort of the medical repercussions of having a surgery, but also like all of the BS that happens in high school, and the sort of relentless top-down, bottom-up bullying of trans individuals. There's a lot of passive-aggressive scenes from teachers and school officials that are exposed in this book, and also just straight up bullying by other youth. Parallel to this, we're running sort of like the werewolf myth. So it ends up being a werewolf story that in some ways even is a little campy. It has a lot of the hallmarks of teenage sort of drama that we can think of that has a lot of precedent before. So it follows a lot of those tropes, and then some kind of like almost campy, werewolfy, how is that, like genre, yeah, workings as well. I found this to be quite a fun read. I think this author has some experience in exploring some like werewolf lore and how it is used to tell, even maybe perhaps historically, or the canon of being symbolic for queer stories. And I thought that came out, and I appreciated that. For the International Booker, which I was reading, International Booker inspired or long list books, I listened to Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Shuangzi and translated by Lin King. I have since learned that listening, and it was a fantastic listen. I found myself like, I think like many of the folks who have interacted with this book, who I've since listened to their reviews, I was like, I mean, this is a great book. This is a fine book. This is an okay book. Is this book worthy of a prize? I don't know. Did I like this book more than I was aware of liking this book? Or sometimes was I even annoyed with this book? Like, there was a lot, and I'm really completely undecided about this book. I had sort of always oscillating experiences with it, and I've since come to realize that there's a whole piece of the text that's missing from the audio. So there are some like fictionalized translation notes that aren't in the audio, which which put into context some of what I certainly felt was the queer tension in this book. However, again, you know, you don't want to put yourself, like, you're trying not to put yourself into the book. You're trying to just, in my case, listen and understand, like, and experience the tension without putting too much meaning. And then what I think these translation notes did was really explore that experience. And I think I think not having those has greatly impacted my experience with the book. Think, I suspect I would have had a different, like, overall experience. I'd be less confused about how I really liked or didn't like that book, if I had had those. It has since been shortlisted. The shortlist has come out, and it has been shortlisted. And again, I find myself perplexed. I don't. I'm not so enthralled to want to actually get a digital or physical copy and read it with my eyes. But if that comes up in my future, I'm really willing to do that. And I'm kind of a bit regretful that I didn't have that element of the book, for all of the reasons I just mentioned. Women's Prize for Fiction, current long list. I read Moderation by Elaine Castillo. I think I have similar feelings to this book, but they're a little bit more defined and refined than Taiwan Travelogue. There were parts of this book that I found fantastic. It did kind of remind me a little bit of like All Fours by Miranda July in some of the ways it confronted female sexuality, females' places, females' roles in life and relationships. And then I thought it was kind of going to go more into a sci-fi direction. It sort of ended up kind of going in like a similar direction as The Startup, a book that I was actually surprisingly liked more than I thought I would, that I read last year. And then like sort of there's a romance thread. There's a romance plot in this that I'm just not a romance girly, and I ended up overall not liking the book very much. But if you kind of like, if you like romance and like romance that also veers off into other genres, I think that would be a good book for you. Okay, and then also just finished, and this one's a little harder for me to talk about, Paradiso 17 by Hannah Lilith Asadi. This is a Palestinian author, Palestinian American author, who explores two things, both the sort of how fast life flashes in front of your eyes and how much one can take for granted in their life until they're confronted with the loss of it. Or until they're confronted with sort of the end of their life, as our protagonist is this feeling of, I don't know, surreality, being, stuck between the living and the dead for a lot of reasons, and particularly in this book. One of the really main reasons is for being exiled from your home, not having a home and always searching for home and what that really means. I think this book grew on me. At the beginning, I was into the book, but wasn't as impressed as I was when it was done as a whole work. And when I realized all of the things that the author did, this one was really triggering for me in my own personal reasons. So I had to remember to just leave myself in the story, but try to also work through some of the triggers so that I could get to the nuances that were different than my own life story, of course, as this author had, as this book had many. Yeah, I think it was a great book. I suspect to see it on the short list, if I'm being honest, of the books that I have read so far for Women's Prize for Fiction. I think it was one of the better ones, and I hope that I feel inspired to do a Women's Prize for Fiction video. I have been reading a lot for them. The final audiobook that I did, I'm fixing to read Donna Tartt's The Dark History, and I just kind of wanted to, prep myself. As it's a literary work that is sort of really influenced by other works, and I think it's sort of a genre defining work, so I might use that for the 52 book club, but I digress. in sort of preparation for that and knowing some things that I know about the Secret History, because the Secret History came out in the 90s. I haven't yet to read it, and I happen to have heard a lot about it by this time. I listened to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by the great Robert Louis Stevenson. As I just finished Mucklefugga, just like last month finished Mucklefugga, and Robert Louis Stevenson's Ghost was an active part in that book. I was glad to get to. I don't remember having read this novella. And then when I was listening to it, I was trying to really remember these like works whose premise lives on, even if someone hasn't engaged with the work, such as Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's really easy to like get lost in, have I seen, do I know about this premise, or do I really know about this work? It was a great little novella. It was a fantastic listen. And I'm glad that I did it. And I think for those who don't know the premise of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I would be extremely surprised to hear about it. It's definitely gothic. It was great to have listened to, because I listened to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein somewhat recently too, to listen to sort of these classics that if I had read before, it was certainly with my eyes. And again, to try to remember, 30 years back, did I read this, or am I just engaging with the premise that's so well known? Yeah. RLS does a great job. Speaking of Mucklefugga, a great job of really building atmosphere. It's a very, what I would call gothic work, and it is just a little novella. Okay, I'm going to switch to my physicals. So I read Outline by Rachel Cuss. This was backlist for Women's Prize for Fiction, and that's why I read this. This is a book where, this is one of those books where absolutely nothing happens. Like, okay. You can't have a book without, never mind, I have read them. There is some plot in this book. However, it's not central to the existence of this book. This book is a meditation. This book is a conversation. This book is a reflection. Yeah. Is that what I can say? This book is a reflection full of symbolism, maybe even motif. And we're learning how and who someone is by the way, all of the extensive conversations and dialogues that other people are having with this person. There's a scene on the boat. The protagonist goes out in a boat with someone whose name we never know. It was just my neighbor from the plane. And he decides to just like go in and full on hit on her. And she doesn't want that at all. In fact, she can't even conceptualize that any of those signals have been sent because she's not there at all. And this is someone in their like middle ages and completely at like having been married, both of these characters, for a while, and completely out of like the playa scene. I don't know what to call it. It sort of happens in young adulthood, early adulthood. And so I could just relate. I just related with that scene so much, and much of this book, actually. The setting is Greece, and I definitely I think Greece as a setting is fantastic. I've loved Greece, so I enjoyed engaging with the setting, and yeah, I can see this is a great work of literature. Is this book for everybody? No, absolutely not. Like, this book is not for everybody. However, Rachel Cuss's writing is notable, and I had a great time with this book. I was able to read this book outside in its physical, in the sun, and I also think that is the way to have read this book. Speaking of Women's Prize for Fiction backlists, I will go ahead and tell you the next several books, that's why I read them. The Gin Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa Anapara. This book was on my mystery thriller shelf because from its synopsis and the little bit I looked up about it online, I knew that it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I knew there's a little mystery, and it's involving kids. They're like 9-10-year-old kids who are trying to solve a mystery, and they live close to a train line called the Purple Line. And in my mind, like fueled by my own life experience and naivete, I thought this was, again, going to be kind of a bit of a Nancy Drew, have some nostalgia for sort of Nancy Drew young sleuths. And no, it had those elements, and those elements definitely drew me in. But fair warning to anybody who wants to read this book was incredibly triggering, I think is the word there. This is a heavy book with heavy reality, and the author's note is fantastic. Learning that this author was a journalist covering stories of children in India during the time of the setting of this novel really helped me understand. Did this journalist, this author, bring to life the stories of these children? Absolutely. This book gutted me. So full warning, this is a beautifully written, fantastically, a novel that needs to be, and extremely emotionally difficult read. Next, I read and listened to All the Birds Singing by Evie Wyld. This is an Australian British author, and the setting is both in England and in Australia. There's two timelines. One runs kind of backwards, where we discover in that way kind of like, I guess, the beginning of these, like the forward running timeline, which is the one in England, and now of a protagonist who's a sheep farmer and has some like haunting memories. There's some symbolism in this book that's not, like, even with horror elements, it's not fully fleshed out. And there are times when I thought this book had a lot of potential and I wanted to like it, but in the end, I didn't at all. I honestly think this book was horrible. Do I regret reading it? Maybe. I don't know. Like, in the end of the day, there were just so many problems with it. Up until and including what, in my opinion, of course, everything I'm saying is my opinion, was gratuitous. Gratuitous racism, gratuitous homophobia. And I can hear somebody saying, well, that was just real, or that's what really happens. For sure. Absolutely. You don't have to tell me twice. And what's the point of putting it in a book that I want to read about? Like, I live out here in this world too. Like, unless you're going to put insight or context that is useful, like, it just landed to me as completely gratuitous. And the character development of the protagonist, of whom, like, the whole story frontwards and backwards is built around, this was not a fully fleshed out character. I don't need to say more negative things. It was not a good book, and I don't recommend it now. Some people do. So, and, you know, I guess if you like dual timelines, like sorting out the struggle of women, there's some feminism in this book, then yeah, like, read other people's good reviews of that. On Beauty by Zadie Smith. This was a winner of the Women's Prize. It was also maybe, well, at least on the long list, if not a short list, for the Booker. And Zadie Smith's writing is fantastic. I found it really difficult to get into this book, and I found that I felt the same about Swing Time. Like, description of art and paintings and or music, albeit incredibly well done and even accessible and beautiful. In both of the cases, Swing Time was more music, this was a little bit more art. It throws me out of the story a little bit. That's a me problem. Zadie Smith's writing is phenomenal. Although found myself thrown out of the story several times, I also is not into reading about upper classes and elitism. I want to see, honor, and recognize that we often don't get works about folks other than, you know, it. We don't get stories about Black excellence, and so the fact that this book is writing about upper and upper middle class Black folk and mixed households, it was important and is important to be told. I myself just don't, I'm not interested in reading about the snobbery of upper classes. It's just like, again, I'm aware of it and not that interested in exploring it as a construct. That being said, Zadie Smith's work with nuance and multi-layerism and just really kind of like bringing these characters fully into stereotypes and then into real characters and kind of oscillating between those. She does some amazing things. In the end of the day, it ended up kind of being high drama, which also isn't necessarily my style. But I did find myself kind of engrossed in the drama, and again, I can't say more positive things about Zadie Smith's writing. Her the way that she writes is notable, and I thought that a lot while just trying to like unpack. There's a lot. There's just really dense as well in the way that there's just a lot of nuance. There's a lot going on. There's just like a long and complex conversation. I think that's what I would say. This conversation about, you know, race and class and privilege and morality and relationships and sacrifice, and yeah, it's a long, complex conversation that sometimes you're like, you know, I just need to turn off a little, and this book kind of doesn't let you, and nor should it. So I had to read this while reading a lot of other things because I found myself just kind of wanting to get through it, and I don't think that was fair to Zadie Smith's brilliance and this work. So I had to sort of like read it for a while and then set it down because it's pretty like there's just a lot going on. It's a network of contemplations and dialogue. So yeah, I'm glad I read this book, definitely. And sure, Zadie Smith should absolutely have her fan group. She's not for everybody, the same as Rachel Cusk. I think that some readers who just wouldn't like it and be more caught up even than I was in some of the things I mentioned. But definitely if you're a lit fic and you like reading about the arts, yeah, and you like a lot of nuance in your writing and beautiful writing, then Zadie Smith's for you. The last book I'm here to talk about is a book that was hanging out off my Black History Month TBR, and I just didn't get to it. And these were these short stories by Jocelyn Nicole Johnson. The collection is called My Monticello, and maybe the largest, almost novella type short story of My Monticello is in here with some other short stories. Yeah, this was a great time. Colson Whitehead said, and I think he did do a great job of summing up what my experience with this book. He said this is a badass debut of any measure, amiable, knowing, and electrifying. Yeah, I you know, that's very general and it can say a lot, but that is the experience that I had with the majority of these short stories. There's a list of like what to do during, they do kind of all lead up. There is some connectivity to them. There's a list, I believe, of what, if I don't misremember, of what to do, like how to get ready for an apocalypse. And then the last story is like dystopian kind of story where there's a group of folks who are descendants of Thomas Jefferson who escaped to Monticello. And it's like, it's a confronting look told through sort of this dystopian genre of, of racism and how history is leveraged, how the telling, of history is leveraged as a manifestation of structural racism. I thought that it's just a really great job of confronting that in this very appropriate dystopian setting, genre, using those, mechanisms of that genre of literature. Absolutely recommend. It's a heavy hitter. It gives you a lot to think about in these little, like, the very short stories, and then one sort of novella. Absolutely highly recommended short story collection by Jocelyn Nicole Johnson. And there we have it. My wrap up is indeed complete. I don't know what's coming next. I have, I'm a little, I guess, I don't know about which videos I'll make or whatever, and I will see, just kind of what shuffles out. In the meantime, I'll still be reading because that's what I do. Till then.